This is Sharpnack Limited, and January 2013. This is a shot I took last week during the frigid weather we had in the Northeast. It's the Amtrak 577, a GP15 sitting static in Penn Yard. Obviously, this is a shot that cannot be taken on the main line, but this logo was just parked there in the yard, so I was crossing to my car, parked in the Amtrak parking lot, and I saw this image, so I took a quick shot with my cell phone, and I think this turned out actually pretty nicely for a cell phone picture. Along with a web of catenary in the dramatic sky, it looks pretty cool, so I was pleased with that one. But the main topic of our episode this week, or this month, or whatever, is one of the locomotives in my collection. This is the HO's Bachmann's Spectrum K4 Pacific with onboard DCC. It's modeled after one of the most celebrated and most successful passenger locomotives of all time, the K4 Pacific from the Pennsylvania Railroad, specifically the one that came out of Baldwin's Locomotive Works in 1927, the 5448. We'll get back to the model soon, but here's a little history about the locomotive itself. The K4 were like the premier passenger locomotive from 1914 all the way till the end of the steam era, as the start of dieselization in 1957. For 42 years, for perspective, that's about as long as I've been alive. These locomotives were the go-to passenger locomotive for the standard railroad of the world. Other locomotives were developed to succeed the K4s, but none of them could match the speed, efficiency, and reliability of this great locomotive. And it really gave the Pennsylvania Railroad a formidable asset in its rivalry with the New York Central and its Hudsons, the other great passenger locomotive of the era. The reason it was so successful was it was just so good at what it did, taking passengers quicker and faster than the competitors. If you look at it, it's a 462 wheel arrangement. It's really built to be a high-speed passenger loco, with the leading four wheels providing good track guidance for the locomotive as it sped in excess of 90 miles per hour, and also made sharp turns through the mountains like Horseshoe Curve and west of Altoona. The two trailing wheels supported the larger boiler and cab, which gave it greater steam power and maximized boiler capacity. And like any locomotive, the K4 was geared for power depending on the size of its driver wheels, which, in this case, the K4 boasted very large 80-inch drivers, and so that meant it had great speed. All in all, this was a simple yet powerful and fast locomotive. No wonder people called it the finest Pacific ever built. Now, a distinctive feature was the square-shaped firebox, which heated the water surrounding. The Bel Pair firebox, as it was called, was expensive to build, but the Pennsylvania Railroad had the money, and for their money they got a great firebox. It was very efficient and had better structural stability. Now, this firebox became a distinctive visual feature of the K4s, and you can see the rectangular firebox right in front of the cab. Now, the K4 first prototype, the 1737, rolled out of the Juniati Works in Altoona. This is a builder's photograph, the customary shot that Works would take to document the configuration of the new locomotive. Now, the Pennsylvania Railroad was a conservative company which tested and experimented, building on the shoulders of previous locomotive experiments. They didn't just change everything in a locomotive and in a new locomotive. It was always building on something. K4 is typical of this culture. While it's enormously successful, it was not a particularly radically revolutionary locomotive when it came out. It was rather the culmination of many experiments that the Pennsylvania Railroad had conducted with previous types, notably the also successful E6 Atlantics and K29s. Now, in its legendary rivalry with the New York Central Railroad, the Pennsylvania Railroad was always looking for a competitive edge, and the K4s were well suited for that much more difficult terrain that it had to traverse in comparison to the New York Central's water level route. The payback was a shorter route, which made the quicker on-time arrivals between New York and Chicago easier. Now, protecting a new image, fresh image, was important, and here you can see a K4 fitted with a streamlined chassis designed by the great industrial designer Raymond Loewy. While really sleek and stylish, the workers didn't really like it because it hid all the moving parts and all the adjustable things and for maintenance. So, as seems to be typical, the workers ended up not liking the sleek and stylish one, and they ended up having him redesign it so that those things were open, as you can see here. But in any case, it's still pretty cool looking, though. Anyway, the Bachmann model I have is the 5448, which, according to records, was built during the lone year 1927 when Baldwin built these for Pennsylvania Railroad. Now, there's been lots of other different models through history. This is Lionel's post-war 2025 K4 Pacific, although in this case, ironically enough, it's actually for the four trailing wheels, it's more like a Hudson. But in any case, you can see the Belpaire firebox in the back there. And, this is a fine running engine. My dad had this one, and he had the more, the more sought after kind, which is a true Pacific with two trailing wheels. But he also had the 675, which is another Pacific done by Lionel. And it's, both of these engines are known as excellent, good quality, and robust engines that really run well on the tracks. Now, the only issue I'll ever have with the Lionel is for the price point. They don't look prototypical. They do look a little stubbier than the original, as you can see here. What I like about HO is that for that price point, you can get a very prototypic looking engine. So I'm always going to be split between the two, I guess. Anyway, Bachmann has done a really good job with this locomotive and during their Spectrum line. For a while, Bachmann was maligned, but the Spectrum really are good quality engines. Here you can see the four leading wheels, the 6 80-inch drivers, and then in the back there's the two trailing wheels. On top, actually back here you can see the Belpaire firebox in its rectangular sort of boxy shape, and that gives it the K4 its distinctive look. They have a builder's plate which withstands close review, and also the keystone on the front. You get a better shot of it in this shot here. Again, a nice gold trim on the outside of that of the keystone, and with the number 5448 on it right there. And there's the builder's plate again. And those wheels are really great. They're very spindly, and they look, I find them to be the bee's knees when I see them rolling along the track. You'll see that in a minute. Even closer shot here. Now these, the applied details are very noteworthy. You got the lamps on either side. You got the release valve, Belpaire boiler in the back, and the bell, and the grab bars. They're all nice applied details that really give this a good look, and very handsome, and withstand a close inspection. And it rides great too. I've never had a problem with it. It's has a nice slow crawl. This is not a slow crawl. We can do slower, but frankly I need to maybe oil it a little bit. But the wheels are just very spectacular as they run along, and the only thing I would say is in terms of a drawback, it's not a drawback, but you can't really get too much more acute on your curves than 18 inches. Beyond that, it gets a little bit tough to negotiate, but overall, this is a fine quality engine, a lot of bang for your buck, and even though it doesn't not quite as feature laden as my Mikado, I almost prefer it. This has been the Sharpnack Limited. Take care.